Achieving the Dream, Inc., it sort of has this core business, which is, again, the completion agenda. So I think it's somewhat uniquely positioned to advocate for student success in what I would consider two directions or levels. One would be in terms of the government, whether it's federal or at the state level, or even at the local level, but then also to engage, again, I think those stakeholders, particularly business and industry and manufacturing, in the role that they can play in terms of helping to shape the outcomes as well as the efficiency and the effectiveness of higher education itself.
That's a great point. What are you hoping that business stakeholders might be doing differently than they're doing now to address the issue around new opportunities for students?
Well, almost a more direct engagement, and it's not to say that, in the past they have not been directly involved, because I think they have. But if there's sort of this gap between what students or what their prospective employees need to know and be able to do, rather than sort of a reactive approach, which is, well, we'll hire people and then we will offer training programs and whatnot to really fit what we need them to be able to do. Rather than taking that approach, and it's not to suggest that that's not a good approach. It has worked, but to be more proactive. And again, I think in terms of economy of scales, the cost associated with being proactive and helping to shape the curriculum and the kinds of skills, particularly the cognitive skills that may not necessarily be discipline or position or work-related position, except that we want, or you want, employees that can think critically, employees that can communicate effectively, employees that can problem solve. And so I think business or the private sector has, I like to think, a very proactive role to play in that regard. I would hope that they would have an interaction with a large percentage of those 1,200 institutions that are committed and want to use data, et cetera, the whole model of data-driven decision-making to increase the number of students who are ultimately successful or actually attain their dream, be it an associate credential or baccalaureate degree. So I would hope that as ATD Inc. moves forward and its model for institutional change, first of all at the institution level, that there would be a real value proposition there for institutions to develop relationships, partnerships with them. Likewise, even beyond the institution level, I think when you're working in that many places in that many states, you do gain some perspective in terms of the sort of policy changes perhaps that would need to be made to help institutions be more effective. The kind of, where there are gaps, while we know a great deal about what it takes to help students be successful, there are still knowledge gaps about, sort of what still needs to change and what needs to happen from not only a policy perspective, but just in terms of practice itself. And again, I think as this network of Achieving the Dream institutions and what you're learning from the work that they're doing, along with the basic ATD model itself, how you can use that information to inform policy going forward, to inform practice going forward, and even to look to see where research still needs to be done. And I think as an entity that its core business, its very core fundamental business is student success in our community colleges. It begins with data. You know, as you say, you don't know what you don't know. And so one of the things you need to begin with at the institutional level is, so what do we know about students? What do we know about how they're doing in developmental courses, how they're doing in credit-bearing courses? What do we know about our support services? What do we know about our instruction? And so I think most fundamental is then to collect the information that will help you decide that, first of all. And I think achieving the dream, even when it was an initiative, it was based on the proposition of letting data drive decisions, which also meant having personnel in place, institutional researchers that actually not only could collect the data, but help interpret the data to faculty, staff, administrators, and others, to then be able to step back and, based on that information, based on the institution itself, then to look across instruction, support services, our student, our service region, and then began to develop what was at the time referred to as an integrated action plan, which took into consideration students, the institution, the community, the service region, and then developing a plan that would offer the best chances for success. And again, because institutions face, they do face challenges around any number of important and necessary things that need to be done in order to continue to operate. How do you then allocate resources across all of those multiple needs to still be able to support student success? And that last piece is really sort of, if that is our declared priority and we want more students to succeed, then in the allocation of resources, it really needs to reflect the importance of being a student-centered institution. And that's basic, I think, to the model of achieving the dream, is that really it's a student-centered system that we're proposing. And so then moving that forward, that the allocation of resources, and again, that's across the institution in terms of faculty development, what's needed, support services for the students who are at the center of the work going forward. By 2025, 60% of the U.S. population holding high quality degrees and credentials. And so it's that high quality piece. I think there are two things. The first is that if anyone chooses to go to college or to enter post-secondary, they should be allowed to do so. That's a real important value proposition. So that's the equity piece, regardless of gender, regardless of even immigrant status, regardless of income status, that just to level the playing field. And because everyone is not starting at the same place, or because everyone is not coming out of K-12 systems where either certain skills or just the opportunity to learn or the quality of the teaching and learning has varied. So notwithstanding all of those things that we know, then the excellence part of the agenda across all of higher education, across post-secondary, but particularly with community colleges that are the open access institutions. So what will be necessary to move students, for those who are not at the start line, how do you get them to the start line? And so that's the debate we hear about developmental education. But then again, there's strong evidence that when students are successful in developmental courses, particularly early math courses, that the chances of them being, first of all, of being retained goes up tremendously, and then secondly, their chances of being successful in credit-bearing courses. And you know, I've been in higher education a long time, so we sometimes create this false dichotomy in, well, not just higher education, it's across the society, but certainly in higher education, that if you're supportive of an equity agenda, that somehow that's in opposition to or zero sum in terms of an excellence agenda. And I reject those as, you know, that's patently false. It's a type 2 error. And so for community colleges to have a significant portion of their resources devoted to developmental education, I think just refutes that altogether, and the evidence of the research that if you are successful in developmental education, students blossom and take off. So, and again, I think achieving the dream is both. It is the equity agenda, and it is four square. I mean, right on, dead on the excellence agenda. Just the fact that they you know, really are committed to the student success proposition, and it does focus on the curriculum.